Good evening and welcome to the final Beyond the Front Page show for the fall 2022 semester here at QU Community College. This is a show brought to you on Spectrum, Verizon, Fios, ARMA, the Auburn Regional Media Access, better known for those people who are downtown, run through the Auburn Public Theater, as well as the college's radio station 89.1. I'm your host, Guy Cosentino. We are delighted to have in the studio today the Auburn Housing Authority's Executive Director, Stephanie Hutchinson. Our plan was to have you as the last guest of last semester. Jeff Dygert was the show before you. You were this one. And then I got COVID, even though I was vaccinated and boosted. But we've asked her to come on to talk about a number of projects that are going on in her domain that include Malone Village, Brogan Manor, Olympia Terrace. You literally can drive by Malone Village today. If you had driven by there 10 years ago, you know it's totally different. We've asked her to come on to talk about all these projects. As a matter of disclosure, we should say that you are a member of the College Board of Trustees. So, welcome.
Thank you.
Great to have you here. So, for those people who just passed by your properties, what is the Auburn Housing Authority?
Sure. So the Auburn Housing Authority is an independent government entity. We own or manage about 350 units of affordable housing right here in Auburn. And we also run a Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher Program.
So those who don't know, what's Section 8?
Section 8 is a rental subsidy that a tenant can take into the private rental market and use to supplement their rent. And
of those 300 plus units, you are a not-for-profit, or are you a government agency or are you a not-for-profit?
So the Housing Authority is a government agency. In order to do the renovations that we've been doing, we've had to transition our properties from being public housing properties owned by us to affordable housing properties that are private. And so we had to form a 501c3 development arm called AHA Development Corporation, and that's how we do most of our redevelopment now. So the Housing Authority manages the properties. The Development Corporation is a part of an entity that actually owns the properties.
And are they the same boards for the most part?
No. So the Housing Authority isn't allowed to control the Development Corporation in any way. So we appoint 3 of the 7 board members of the Development Corporation, and the rest are appointed on a rolling basis from among the existing board members.
And your board, though itself, the Auburn Housing Authority, is that a self-sustaining board, or are they appointed by the city?
The city manager.
City manager.
Yep.
And before becoming executive director, what did you do?
So before I was executive director at the Housing Authority, I was a senior budget analyst for Onondaga County's Division of Management and Budget.
Went to Auburn schools, graduated Cornell.
Yes, so I graduated from Cornell. I got a bachelor's degree in industrial and labor relations and economics, and then I got a master's in public administration from Maxwell School at Syracuse University.
And how long have you been the executive director of the Housing Authority?
I've been there around 13 years.
So how large a staff do you have?
There's only 11 of us. We're very small. 5 of us in the office, 5.5 of us in the office, and then about 5.5 of us on maintenance.
And how large is your budget?
It depends on the property, but overall we're managing probably $3 to $4 million annually.
And is most of your money your income derived from rentals?
Yes, so all of our income, for the most part, is derived from our rental properties, with the exception of our Section 8 program, where the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development provides us with administrative funding to run those programs.
So let's talk about some of the units that you have, and on average, you said 350 roughly units?
Yeah, just about.
So what's your vacancy rate? Not that you're a hotel or a motel, but that's a number that's important for you.
Sure. So we're about 98% occupied at all of our properties, with the exception of a property named Olympia Terrace. And that's at about 50% capacity right now because we've been leasing down in order to do renovations.
So I want to talk how you move people around, because that, I'm sure, is its
Right.
own challenge
Yep.
in itself. But did COVID make it easier or harder to keep your vacancy rate up, or did it have no effect?
So what COVID did in the beginning was it reduced turnover. So for about a year and a half, we saw very little in the way of tenants coming or going. After things began to open up a little bit, then we had kind of a wave of people moving out, who had either planned to move out all along and just hadn't been able to, or had changes in their family composition, or some purchased homes, some went to live with other family members. So there was a higher vacancy rate, I would say, right after COVID kind of ended. And now we're back to what we would normally see.
What you would normally have is turnover?
Yeah, around 2%.
So how many units are at Malone?
Malone Village has 188 units.
And that's your largest property by far?
Correct.
That's where your offices are?
Yes.
And then Brogan Manor and Olympia Terrace are next to each other off State Street?
Correct, on Olympia Avenue off of State Street.
And they are divided up. How many are in Brogan Manor?
Brogan Manor has 88 units, and Olympia Terrace has 50 units.
And what's the difference between the three as it comes to units,
not
numbers?
So Malone Village was built first in 1955 and 1965. It was most recently renovated, so it's brand new at this point. It's 1 through 4 bedroom units. Brogan Manor was built in 1975. It's a little bit, the units I would say are a little bit bigger, but they're also kind of more on top of each other instead of just side by side. 88 units, 2, 3, and 4 bedrooms. And Olympia Terrace was built in 1979, much bigger than the other two, just 2 and 3 bedroom units. And
do you operate any other properties?
We also operate Merriman Circle.
So what is Merriman Circle?
Merriman Circle is a 28-unit development. It contains 20 units of permanent housing and 8 units of transitional housing, and it's all for families experiencing homelessness.
And is that one that's run in conjunction with the Rescue Mission?
Correct. Yep.
And what is their role?
So the Auburn Rescue Mission provides supportive services to all of the families residing at that complex. They provide ongoing case management, all kinds of activities for kids, for adults, help with employment, help with education. They're staffing the site. They have at least 4 individuals on site daily.
And I know your predecessor, Lydia Husak, was very involved in something called... So first of all, Merriman Circle is where? Merriman Circle is kind of right in the middle of Malone Village. Okay. You can get to it by driving down Garrow Street. Ave over by the park. It's part of the Malone Village. Correct. Okay. Yep. As I mentioned, Lydia Husak was very involved with the Lane Estates. Is that something you're still involved with? Not anymore. I think a company called 2+4 has taken over management of Lane Estates. So how does one qualify to get into any of your... Let's talk about the big 3. Let's talk about Malone, Brogan, and Olympia. How does one qualify? So a household has to income qualify to reside at the properties. The highest income qualification is 60% of annual median income, and the limit changes depending on your household size. So as your household size gets bigger, your income limit is slightly higher. And is there a sliding scale for if you're a 2 or 3 or 4 person family, or if you're a 2-person family and you're all 2-person families, but your income varies on that scale? So because the housing is now mostly privatized, the rent is set at a very low affordable level, but it's fixed. So it doesn't vary with tenant income. So give me an example. If I qualified to move into, let's just say Malone Village. Yep. What's my rent? So rents at Malone Village, depending on what type of unit you get, range from $500 to $570, utilities included. Okay. Per month. And that stays steady forever, or is it reassessed on a regular basis? We assess it on an annual basis. We try to keep rent increases to a minimum. We are going to do a 2% rent increase this year
rents are skyrocketing citywide. So it's a very modest increase compared with what you would find on the private rental market.
So is there a time limit that a resident can stay?
Nope. So all that matters is that a resident income qualifies at move-in.
And I know on your website it says, well, I guess maybe I should put this a little different way. What do you consider the poverty level, and how does that impact somebody who's, are people who are, I think it said on your website, low to moderate income. So what do you consider that range for yourself?
Generally, the 60% level for a one-bedroom unit is going to be around $30,000 and work its way up from there. For a family of four, the income limit is around $50,000.
So besides housing, and I know you have the rescue mission there, are there other services that you as the Auburn Housing Authority provide? Yes.
So we do administer the Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher Program. In that program, tenants are able to take a rental subsidy with them where they pay 30% of their own income toward rent, and we supplement the rest of the rent.
And that's portable.
And that's portable. Yep, you can use it in our complexes or you can take it elsewhere.
So in a given year, how many vouchers do you have?
Right now we have about 368 vouchers leased up out in the private rental market.
And you usually, if I remember correctly, usually have a waiting list.
Yes. So what we do is we open the wait list, we let it grow to around 200 to 250 applicants, and then we close it until it's mostly empty, and then we'll reopen it again.
How long does it take to go through that many?
About a year and a half lately.
So a number of those people who get Section 8 will either not need it or they will increase their income in some way.
Yep.
They're not
so
eligible.
You can become over income for the program, or some individuals can't find an apartment where they would like to use it. Others won't get back to us, or they will have moved and not given us updated contact information. So by no means does every person on the wait list end up being a successful lease up. We call it a lease up.
But some of those individuals, doesn't mean that you can keep that voucher forever.
You can keep it, and then if you reach what we call it a zero housing assistance payment level. If you reach that level, meaning that 30% of your income is above what's required to pay your rent, then we leave you in that state and we don't provide a subsidy for 6 months. After 6 months, if your income still exceeds, if 30% of your income still exceeds the rent level, then you're terminated from the program. But if you have a change in employment again and your income drops, then you stay on the program.
So you mentioned Rescue Mission. Are there other community partnerships that you have put in place at your 3 properties?
Yeah, so we work as part of our Section 8 program. We also administer what are called HUD-VASH vouchers. They're vouchers for disabled veterans. We work closely with the VA. The VA provides case management for the individuals utilizing those vouchers. We also administer what's called a mainstream voucher program, and it's a Section 8 program essentially, but it's only for disabled households who are at risk of institutionalization. So we work with very high-risk households on this program. There could be drug use or criminal history, something that's preventing this household from being able to find a unit. And those individuals will have case management through mental health.
So it's not case management through Auburn Housing Authority?
No, we don't provide the case management. We administer the voucher, supplement the rent, handle that side of it, and then we will work with any number of supportive services agencies in the county. They will provide supportive services to those individuals.
Any idea how many VA?
We have about 10 VA units right now and 38 mainstream units.
So you mentioned the years that all three properties were built,
Right.
50-something, 65, early 70s, late 70s, all before the Americans with Disabilities Act.
Yes.
So how of your overall property portfolio, how many of them
Not
are
many.
Okay.
We would like to have more. So at the beginning, we didn't have any handicap accessible units. We have 3 at our Olympia Terrace property, but they're not truly ADA accessible. So when we renovated each property, we have added handicap accessible units. So at Malone Village, there were none. Now we have 20.
Okay.
At Brogan Manor, there were none, and now we have, I think, 9.
Do they quickly go?
Oh, yeah. They go quickly, and then the tenants don't tend to move out, so they don't turn over often. So we wish we had more. There's a need.
So we've gone these 15 minutes, and now I want to get to what I wanted to really have you on about.
Okay.
And it's a remarkable transformation in the southwest corner of the city, Malone Village. What'd you do? How did it come about? And how are you paying for it? So
We're very excited. So
it's if you drove by, if you were there as a kid, I grew up in that area. It was all brick. It was standard. It was so uniform. It was
kind of blah. Yeah.
So what have you done for anybody who hasn't driven in that neighborhood?
Sure. So we completely renovated the unit. So we knocked down all the interior walls, all the doors, removed all the flooring, and everything's new, like right down to the studs. The roofs are new. There's siding. There's new porches. All sidewalks on the site are new. Yep, we've added shutters, and we've added.
Did you add more units?
We didn't. It's the same number of units. But we had basically one chance to make them look better. So we tried very hard to get it right.
So how much did it cost overall?
So we did it in 3 phases. We're in the process of finishing up the 3rd phase. Each phase took 2 years. So it's a 6-year project overall. I would say each phase costs about $20 million. The construction budget for each phase was about $13 million.
So what's the difference of the 7?
The difference is your construction contingency and then all of your soft costs. So before we even start a project, we typically spend around $150,000 doing all of the environmental testing, asbestos testing, lead testing, appraisals, market studies, surveys, all of the work that you have to do before you can go and knock down a building, and all the due diligence you have to do to be able to complete an application to the state for funding.
So you mentioned lead. I know you and several others have been very involved in lead, not only all over Cuyahoga County. How big was lead as an issue because of the age of your properties?
Lead had been addressed in our housing at an earlier date. So I believe in the 1980s.
And asbestos is
the lead was encapsulated.
Okay.
So we still had lead, but it wasn't presenting any kind of issue or danger to tenants.
How about asbestos?
We had asbestos in the drywall compound and in the glue that held the windows in place. So all of that has to be abated before we can start construction.
So you said roughly a $60 million project if you had all 3 in. So where'd the money come from?
So what we do is we apply to New York State in a competitive funding round for what are called low-income housing tax credits. And we are able to, if we win and receive an award from the state, which we've done, we receive an allotment of tax credits that we then sell all in bulk at once to a large syndicator, which is typically a big bank.
Right, an investor. This is investment for somebody else.
So basically the bank that we have done all our deals with is called Regions Affordable Housing. They're headquartered in Georgia. And they they basically purchase the tax credits from us and provide an equity infusion. So their cash accounts for most of the construction budget. So they might pay us $8 million for, our tax credits.
So with that, will your tenants see an increase in their costs?
Yes and no. So when our units were public housing units, tenants paid rent based on their income. So at Malone Village, for example, a tenant would pay 33% of their income towards rent and utilities. At that time, the average rent paid by a tenant was between $450 and $500. That model's not sustainable because you can't, or we couldn't, run a property with an average rent of $450 per unit. So in order to stabilize the property, we have to set an affordable rent that's guaranteed.
But it's not impacting your occupancy rate if you're still at 98%.
No, we set the rents low enough where it didn't really make a difference for many of the residents.
So you started the projects really 5 years ago.
5 years ago.
5 years ago.
Yep.
Your process would be to finish by 2023, 2024?
Yep, we'll finish in the summer of 2023.
So 180 units, you said?
188.
Okay. If you're renovating, I'm assuming people can't stay in their units. So how did you manage that?
So we started by leasing down a portion of the property.
So it means just leaving places vacant.
Just leaving places empty when they become vacant. But we still had our maintenance crew turn them over and get them ready for occupancy. We just didn't allow new people to move in. And then we took everybody who was residing in the first area of construction and we moved them over to those apartments.
And were they able to move back at some?
And then they were, they relocated for about a year. And then when their unit was ready, they moved back. And we just kind of proceeded that way around the property. So now we're at the end and we're taking new people off of our waiting list at this point.
How long are you usually of a waiting list do you usually have?
Typically, tenants or applicants are on a wait list for 6 months to 18 months, depending on the unit size and type.
So they may have to wait. So where do they come from? Are they at other housing facilities or housing units, or are they renters somewhere? Are they living with other family members?
Yeah, sometimes they're renting at other affordable housing complexes in Auburn. Many of them are younger and they're residing with family members or friends. Yep. And then many are just in the private rental market.
So I wanted to ask you, before we get to Brogan and Olympia, because you did this in the middle of COVID.
Yep.
Which I'm sure was just a plan.
Yeah, it was very pleasant.
So did it have an impact on your operations, first of all?
No. So one of the only things that was allowed to remain open during the shutdown was the construction of affordable housing. Okay. So the contractor, we had to take a lot of... So
renovations still kept going.
Right.
Did you suffer supply chain issues along the way?
We did. We had to just adapt, and the contractor had to order things a lot earlier.
Okay. So you've undertaken a renovation of Brogan Manor, correct?
We renovated Brogan Manor from 2013 to 2015. So that was actually the first complex.
And that's done?
That's done. Yep.
And so what are you doing at Olympia Terrace now?
Olympia Terrace, we're going to do the same thing we've done at Brogan and Malone. That'll be a full gut rehab. And we're in the process of applying for that funding now. So the goal would be that we finish up Malone Village in June of 2023. And if we receive funding, we will start Olympia Terrace around that same time.
So at that time, you will have accomplished this and renovated 300 plus units?
Yeah, so the goal is that by the summer of 2025, we will have renovated our entire portfolio.
So what's your next challenge after that?
I think that obviously by 2025, we'll have some units that are in need of critical maintenance. So we'll be looking at, hot water heater replacement and some of that. That's the physical plant stuff. I think our push in 2025 would be how can we provide more social services to the tenants that reside in the complexes.
So how so?
I think it would just be expanding our partnerships with existing organizations.
So do you have community rooms and places where people, do they have to pay for that? How does that work?
Tenants can rent the community
room. So for a birthday party or a family reunion.
Yep, and we have...
and you've upgraded playground equipment as well.
Yep, that's all new. We have, all of the human services agencies in the county are free to come in and we will host events for tenants. They will go door to door and...
So are you, as the executive director, pushing this partnership idea that you need to have more community partners?
We always have. I think that once we have the physical plant in order, we'll have time to focus on that more intensely.
Can I ask you a general question, because I know you're very involved. You've looked at this from a budget analysis part when you were in Syracuse for Onondaga County. You've now been with the agency 12 years. What's the biggest housing challenge that you see your tenants having?
It's really finding affordable housing and maintaining it.
Do we have enough in Cuyahoga County?
We need more, but I think we need to be careful that we use our existing housing stock to create it. In other words, I don't think that we need more buildings and complexes.
So you don't need to necessarily cluster again.
Right.
Similar to whether it's Lane Estates or Malone Village, Brogan Manor, or Olympia Terrace.
Right.
You're thinking more integrated into the community.
We'd really like to see scattered site affordable housing throughout the community.
Is that something the Auburn Housing Authority can operate, or is that something that
we can? It's not our specialty, though. There's another developer out of Syracuse called Housing Visions. I'm sure you're familiar with their work. A little bit. Yep. They did a lot of renovating on Orchard Street and Fort Street in Westlake. That's really where they shine. And so our goal is to just be helpful to them in their quest to accomplish this.
But those Housing Visions projects were most likely 10 and 20 years old now. Is there something that you know of, not that you have to give us the secret if you do, but if you'd like to, you can. Is there some plan out there to do
Housing Visions is looking at doing another similar project right now.
So they're looking at a particular area?
They're working, and they're looking at partnering with Chapel House and also with Cuyahoga Community Health Network to serve as supportive services providers, to do a project that would include a shelter, a new shelter on Grant Avenue, some supportive affordable units.
And this is up towards Walmart, where they're looking at.
Right, where Chapel House currently has its site on Grant Ave.
On Grant Ave.
On Grant Ave.
Okay, not
on Franklin Street.
On Grant Ave.
Nope. Okay. So they'd have some supportive housing units where they would be working with supportive services agencies who would provide case management to the individuals residing in the apartments, and then they would just have some affordable units throughout the community.
Finally, if you could tell the public something about Auburn Housing Authority, what would you like them to know about you and your units?
We would just want them to know that we have some really wonderful tenants that have been incredibly patient with us through this whole renovation process, and they are finally able to take more pride in where they live, which makes us extremely happy, and we as a staff are happy to be able to make this housing available in the community, and to no longer have to rent units that were in the condition that they used to be in. I just think there's a lot of preconceived notions about who lives in our complexes, and they're just like you or me.
Well, delighted that you could finally join us after a year trying to get you on television to do this. And if you have further updates, we'd love to have you. Our guest has been the Auburn Housing Authority's Executive Director, Stephanie Hutchinson, to give us an update of what's been going on at Malone Village, Brogan Manor, and Olympia Terrace, which all come under their purview. We would like to let you know that this is our last show of the season as students head into finals in the Thanksgiving holiday. But you can send us your ideas for thoughts for future guests or questions that you'd like to have us ask starting in February. You can send those to cozguytho@aol.com. I also like to just take a minute to thank the students who've been in the studio this fall, as well as the team, the triumvirate that really puts this all together. Professor Steve Keeler, Mike Morano, and Jeff Sezniak, who make us all sound and look good, but more importantly, do a great program for this college. And we want to thank them for their time and efforts. In between, we hope you have a great Thanksgiving, have a great holiday season and New Year, and we hope you'll come back and join us in February when we return. I'm Guy Cosentino for QU Community College. We want to thank you for watching. Have a safe holiday season and be safe.